The Mongols did not rely on numbers or strength alone. They relied on fear. Stories of destroyed cities spread ahead of their armies, and many chose surrender rather than resistance, because resistance meant extinction. From China to Eastern Europe, no army had been able to stop them. By the middle of the 13th century, Mongol expansion seemed unstoppable. In 1260, that changed. The Western campaign was led by Hulagu Khan, a grandson of Genghis Khan. His objective was clear: to break the political and spiritual center of the Islamic world. In 1258, the Mongols reached Baghdad. For 5 centuries, it had been the capital of the Abbasid Caliphate, a city of scholars, science, and libraries without equal. It fell within weeks. The caliph was executed, much of the population was massacred, and books were thrown into the Tigris until the river ran dark with ink. What had taken centuries to build was destroyed in a matter of days. After Baghdad, the Mongols continued west. Aleppo fell, Damascus surrendered. One by one, cities chose survival over resistance, because everyone understood what happened to those who fought. By then, there was nothing left between the Mongols and Egypt. But inside the empire, something was breaking. In 1259, the great Khan Mongke died, and in the Mongol world, succession was never automatic. Every prince of the royal family was summoned back to Mongolia, because power would not be inherited, it would be decided. By this time, the empire already operated through separate centers of power. To the north, across the steppes and Russia, Berke Khan commanded the Golden Horde. In Persia and the Middle East, Hulagu ruled the Ilkhanate. In Central Asia, the Chagatai Khanate held the old Mongol heartlands. And in the east, the struggle for the throne would soon divide Kublai and Arik Berke. Authority was regional, and loyalty was personal. Without a strong great Khan, there was no one left to hold the empire together. And the divisions were not only political. Berke Khan had converted to Islam. The destruction of Baghdad and the slaughter of Muslim cities outraged him. His relationship with Hulagu deteriorated quickly. Within a few years, the two Mongol rulers would be at war. For the first time in their history, Mongols would fight Mongols. The empire that had conquered half the world was beginning to fracture. The succession crisis forced Hulagu to act. He withdrew part of his army and marched east to secure his position. But the campaign in the west did not stop. He left the campaign in the hands of one of his most trusted commanders, Kitbuka Noyan, a disciplined, battle-hardened veteran of Mongol campaigns, trusted to keep the advance moving. Egypt was different. It was not ruled by a royal dynasty, but by soldiers, the Mamluks. They had been brought as enslaved boys from frontier regions and slave markets, raised in military camps and trained for war from childhood. They were not bound by blood or inheritance. Their strength came from discipline and loyalty alone. Their ruler was Sultan Qutuz, a soldier who had risen through the ranks. He understood what the Mongol advance meant. If Egypt fell, there would be no major power left to resist. The Mongols would control the gateway between North Africa and the Eastern Mediterranean, and the region's most important trade routes. For the Mamluks, this was not another campaign, it was the last line. The Mongols sent their ultimatum to Egypt: submit or be destroyed. Qutuz received the envoys. Then he made one of the boldest decisions any ruler could make at the height of Mongol power. He had the envoys executed. Their heads were displayed at the gates of Cairo. This was not just defiance, it was a calculation. He had seen what happened in Syria. Cities that surrendered were spared when it suited the Mongols. Others were destroyed anyway. There were no guarantees, and among the Mamluks, weakness was dangerous. If he submitted, he risked losing authority, even before facing the Mongols. Resistance was a risk, but it gave Egypt a chance. News reached the Mongol camp quickly. The envoys had been killed. Under Mongol law, envoys carried the protection of the Great Khan. Executing them was more than a diplomatic insult. It was a direct challenge to Mongol authority. The decision now rested with Kitbuka. He ordered an immediate advance. The army moved south, fast and without hesitation. This was how Mongol campaigns usually unfolded. A ruler resisted, the army broke, and the city surrendered. They expected the same result: another short campaign, another certain victory. They did not know. This time, the enemy was waiting. The Mongols depended on open ground, space for speed and maneuver. Qutuz understood this. He did not wait for the Mongols to reach Egypt. He marched north to meet them, choosing the battlefield himself. Ain Jalut was a narrow valley in Palestine where their advantage would disappear. But reaching it was not simple. To march north, the Mamluk army had to pass through territory controlled by the Crusader states along the Levant coast, Acre, Tyre, and the remaining strongholds of the Old Kingdom of Jerusalem. If the Crusaders attacked from behind, the Mamluk army would be caught between two enemies. But the Crusaders chose not to intervene. They allowed the Mamluks to pass through their territory. For them, the Mongols were the greater danger. Because of that decision, Qutuz and his commander Baybars reached Ain Jalut with their army intact. The Mongols were advancing straight into Qutuz's plan. As the Mongols advanced towards Egypt, they found the Mamluk army waiting at Ain Jalut in the valley. General Baybars advanced to engage, then began a controlled withdrawal. The Mongols followed, confident and aggressive, convinced the enemy was beginning to break. They rode into the valley, pursuing the Mamluk line, unaware that the main force was concealed along the surrounding slopes. Both sides understood what this battle meant. For the Mongols, it was another campaign. For the Mamluks, it was the last barrier. Behind them lay Cairo. If they failed here, there would be nothing left to stop the advance. Kitbuka reacted immediately. He responded the way Mongol commanders always did. He attacked. The advance was fast, direct, and relentless. Mounted archers fired as they advanced, targeting horses and exposed riders to break the Mamluk formation. The Mamluk line tightened, then it began to bend. The fighting closed into hand-to-hand combat. Baybars ordered another withdrawal. Again, it looked like the line was breaking. Kitbuka ordered pursuit. The Mongols pressed forward, pushing deeper into the valley. As they advanced, their formation stretched and coordination began to weaken. Then the hidden reserves struck. Cavalry surged down from the surrounding slopes, hitting the Mongols from both flanks. As the advance began to lose momentum and pressure built from the flanks, the stretched formation started to compress. The Mongols were losing the space their tactics depended on. Archers fired into the compressed ranks as heavy Mamluk cavalry pushed into the packed formation, leaving no space to disengage or regroup. Pressure came from every direction, and the Mongol advance began to stall. Units lost alignment, and the battle broke into scattered fights. Kitbuka continued to fight rather than withdraw. Retreat required space, and there was none. When his horse was killed, he continued fighting on foot at the center of the line. Mamluk troops closed in around him, and he was captured. When word spread that Kitbuka had been captured, discipline collapsed. Units began to fall back. The retreat quickly turned into a flight. For the first time in their great western campaigns, a Mongol army was running. After Ain Jalut, Kitbuka was executed, and the Mongol force in Syria collapsed. The surviving units withdrew east. The Mamluks moved north, retook Damascus, and restored their control over Syria. The succession crisis kept Hulagu inside the empire. and his growing conflict with Burqa Khan of the Golden Horde left him no room for another Western invasion at the time. But the most important change was psychological. Until Ain Jalut, the Mongols had seemed unstoppable. Now they had been defeated. The news spread the same way fear once had. The fear remained, but the certainty was gone. History does not always change slowly. Sometimes it shifts in a single battle.